Have you ever wondered whether the problems in the world today would exist if we had deeper connection to ourselves, others, and the environment, and acted from that place?
Welcome to the Conscious Action Podcast with your hosts Brian Berneman and Kayla Greenville, who believe that connection is the key to taking conscious action as individuals and creating a better world.
We are here to raise awareness and inspire meaningful action by sharing stories, knowledge, and conversations with thought leaders and change makers.
From sustainability to well-being and everything related to conscious living, our mission is to empower you to be the change that you want to see in the world. Welcome everyone to a new episode of the Conscious Action Podcast. I am Brian Berneman, your host, and I have the pleasure for this episode to be joined by Anna Bordignon. Thank you so much, Anna, first of all, for taking the time to be here to speak with us. And I know a little bit about you, what you do, but not everyone does. And I would love for you to share a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Thank you. And thank you for having me here today. So I'm the founder of Munch, and under that company we have two key brands, which is Munch, and then we have our other brand called Nil Products. Which I started 5 years ago, and then probably 2 years before that we had a blog and kind of started evolving from there.
Cool. And what led you into doing this? Were you always interested in the sustainable, ethical products or life, or was this something that started to develop through time?
For me, I was always interested. I'd always be conscious of what sort of clothes I purchased in my younger days and when I was at university. But it really wasn't until I had my children that I really felt the need to do something that was a legacy for them and something for my great and great-grandchildren. Because I was actually a commercial lawyer for about 12 years before I had my children. But the catch was I was either going to go to art school or law school. And I chose law, which gave me good business skills. But I always had that creative bend. And what I'm doing now is a nice combination of both. And, I feel like I'm doing it for our children. I grew up in New Zealand where we could swim absolutely everywhere, and every river, every beach. People, we went to the rubbish dump with Dad. We knew where our rubbish was going. We composted, we did all those things. But really, in the last 20 years, people are not doing that. Our waterways aren't great. So I really felt quite privileged in my life and where I am. So I really wanted to do something that I felt was doing good for the planet and directly good for my children and my great-grandchildren and every child in this world.
That's so beautiful. And it's so interesting, you're mentioning this. There has been, not only on the podcast already on previous episodes, but I'm meeting so many people that were in one career and suddenly they became parents and were like their eyes open in terms of what you were saying, what's the legacy, what are we doing for like the future of our kids and our grandkids, and changing what they are doing. It's such an interesting thing. And I wonder, because I've had this conversation with a lot of people around the sustainability space, that some people say that one of the main issues is, having kids. It's adding one of the main issues to the world. And my point of view, and I would love your point of view, my point of view is actually if you raise them the right way, you're creating actually a positive effect.
Absolutely. My kids do know about recycling. They do know about let's not have plastic. But for me, it needs to be wider than that. It needs to be not just my children. It needs to be other children and other parents. It's really that generation from sort of 50 to 60 or probably 40 to 60 who really, what is this? Is this really a category? When we started 5 years ago, people laughed at us. Plastic, it's great, plastic's great. You can't have a product category that's about no plastic. So, and there is now, and it's growing. We were the first to bring beeswax wraps to the market. All the girls still complain how many times we had to explain what a beeswax food wrap is. We don't have to do that. We've had other people come into the market. And I believe pie is big enough. It's really cool. People know what they are now. People are turning their minds. But as I said, it's taken a while. It's certainly taken a while. I feel where we are with our business now, it's actually ensuring that people know that a brand is actually genuine and can be trustworthy, because there are people coming into this market for a quick buck, and it's never ever been what it's for me. So for us, it's actually about saying, hey, we've got a really good supply chain. Hey, we look at all the certifications. We are really intelligent on looking at the whole process of our brand, from start to finish, who makes them. And for me, that is really key. So we actually support about 20 women throughout New Zealand through our traditional outwork model, which kind of we've reinvented. We send products to them, they make it in their homes. And these women often find it really, really difficult to get a job. We pay per wrap or per whatever they're making, and they do it in their own time. And these are people who are so skilled, but find it really hard to hold down a job for many different reasons. So for me, that makes me feel really good on my heart, because I feel very, very privileged. I was educated, I've got lots of skills, but not everyone started the way I started. So I love that. Not all our products are made that way, but quite a few are made that way. And then it's, okay, so what is it replacing? And then how do we dispose? So for example, our beeswax food wraps, we were cutting all the edges off by hand, because everything's still done by hand. And we thought, well, let's roll them up and make them into little organic fire starters. So we started selling those on Amazon, and it's actually a great product, because it means that whole process is a closed loop, and that's really exciting. So where we can do that, I love it when we can. So I think just going back to the genuineness and the honesty, it's actually also the intellect without sounding arrogant. At all. It's actually been thinking intelligently through the whole process. And I suppose having some aroha for what you're doing and those products.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that, you were mentioning before, there's so many different aspects when we are working in this space, that there is the education, there is the understanding inequality, and how do you actually use, as you were saying, one's privilege to support those that perhaps didn't start from the same space. Then there is the gender or racial or cultural inequalities, so the social inequalities. Then there is the sustainability in terms of the entire supply chain, as you were saying. And I think that when we start to look at it from all of these different perspectives and see that, of course, we're not going to be able to do everything, but we're focusing on some of them, and that's what you're doing, really.
Yeah, I think every social entrepreneur wants to do everything. That's a good habit and a bad habit, but to survive, to create a sustainable, not using the word sustainable as in green sustainable, but a sustainable, profitable business, you do have to try and be focused on what really, what are your core values and what really does matter. Yeah. And I always have in mind too, as the consumer, what can they really afford? And how can we make it even more affordable? But is that value add of explaining too that organic cotton is actually costs more to make and produce. So that sort of kind of moves into those challenges that as a brand and a brand owner, how we message those and also be very conscious of getting our pricing appropriate.
Yeah, and I know that you focus a lot on parents and a lot on that education for the kids. Can you explain why? I think that you said it a little bit. Why do you think that is a key place to actually start educating the parents?
So for our Munch brand, that's really about 100% sustainable kitchens. And it really started as a kids baby brand. It's all about helping us to help you raise eco warriors, because luckily now in New Zealand in particular, schools are teaching their kids, and if we can support them with products as well, a parent can't really not listen to their child about those areas, and they're educating sometimes the parents. And they've got so much passion. As people get older, they lose the passion. You've got to do stuff you love. I still have a passion for what I do, but I see so many people don't. When a person is a child, they have oodles of passion, don't they? So we're going to see more and more little eco warriors or bigger eco warriors coming through, which is really exciting. So it is about empowering them, and we try and do that under our Munch brand. Our Nil brand is more of an older person, not older persons, but we're really focusing outside of kids.
Interesting. And would you be able to share a little bit from a business perspective? What was the journey that took you from the moment that you said, I'm going to start something like this, and what has it been like for people that are thinking either to start their own business, or if they are in early stages, what are some of the key things that you've learned?
Tenacity, and a no can always be a yes. And I suppose that, the trendy word at the moment is resilience. So the fact is, you just got to keep going. Some of our big retailers here and overseas, they said no to us many times, because the market wasn't ready. In some senses, we started this too early, but because we keep at it, it's worked out for us. So you've got to have passion to do it. I think if you don't, and also I think you just got to give things a go. My motto, and I think it comes from my father, everything will always be okay. What's the worst that could happen? But I think the key is to always respect people along the way, Yeah,
definitely. And it's interesting that you said that, because I come from a family that always supported me, and that I know that I am privileged, that worst case scenario for me, it's nowhere near what it can be for a lot of people if they lose all of their money, or if whatever they are doing fails, quote unquote. I know that I'm still going to land on my feet, and I'm still going to be okay to keep on trying and to do something new. And I know that from that perspective, I always try to encourage everyone that is in a position to do that, to actually give it a go. Because as you say, what's the worst that could happen?
Yeah, I agree. And I think, I think New Zealand as a whole, we should be putting our money into businesses, not into property anymore. We were renowned to have that, number 8 wire mentality. We do, but not always. So be great to see more of that encouragement from government or business owners. actually, most people want to help others. I think I've been very lucky. I've had lots of help by more senior business people. And, I'm very happy to do the same, a coffee, a chat, a lot of things aren't Googleable.
Yeah.
You just have to connect, you have to talk with people.
Definitely. And I think that's so important. I recently, this year, I started, and I found a mentor, and I started to find a little bit more of that space, because up until then I was having conversations here and there, but it wasn't like this big thing that I'm like, okay, like I'm actually going to spend time and actually talk with someone and listen to them and follow some of these things. And I think that it's important, because we don't have all of the skills that are necessary sometimes to do this. And when we start our own business, sometimes we need to learn how to do everything.
Oh, absolutely. You're a servant to many, and you have to have your head and mind across a lot of things. Yeah. And I do think it's just about connecting, and I do think everybody wants the same thing. People want to be connected. People want to achieve. So if you strip everything back, people want to look after our planet. It's actually just, I think, trying to connect and understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, and I say usually that same thing. I do believe that we are all loving, caring human beings, and we just don't know enough, and we don't know the impact of some of our actions. And as well, for us in the Western society, sometimes what is the convenient thing to do actually is not the best for the environment or for each other. And being able to have some access to products that enable us to do that more easily, like the products that you are providing. It's giving people the chance to, instead of using that single-use plastic, okay, use this other product, reuse it, and use it as much as possible, knowing that as well on the way of making it, you looked after what's on the supply chain.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for us, it's about making it really accessible for people. So that's really important, because people may think that want to do something, so they need to be able to access it. And also, it's got to be effortless. We're a society that wants to do things quickly now and convenient. So we try our hardest to actually make things easy for people as much as we can, and convenient. Because I think, even though we all talk about slowing down, and which is a good thing, which I hope to slow down myself over Christmas and New Year, even though we've booked to go canoeing down the Wanganui River, but I'm not sure that people will really slow down. So it's about thinking intelligently through products, how we can get them into people's hands, and how we make that easy, and how to make that education easy for people to understand.
Yeah, and it's really, I always advocate for slowing down, for living a more simpler life, which doesn't mean not taking advantage of what like Western society has to offer, but it is that being able to have the time to actually get nourished and to enjoy what is around, especially in a country like New Zealand. At this time, we are super privileged and super blessed of the opportunity comparing to a lot of different countries. But as well, I do think that it's always necessary to see, okay, there is the ideal and there is the reality of where most people are, and most people are not slowing down. It's what you're mentioning. And we need to provide that product or that service that is going to bridge that gap.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I think it's also about life in general, to have a variety of different outlets. I always thinking I would be really stressed, I think, if I didn't have my children. that for me, they're an outlet for me not to think about work. Most entrepreneurs, or particularly women, are young, pre-children. I like to think I'm still young, but I'm not in my 20s. So you don't find too many women with children doing the journey I'm on, but I'd really encourage it, or men, because, you don't end up getting overloaded because you have another side to your life, to take your mind and the ability to actually be and really think through what you're doing. Even though you're in the present with your children, you've still got that little bit of space there to actually just mull over issues and ideas and things.
Yeah, and also I think that on top of that, and I don't know if this is true for you, perhaps having a reminder of what's the motivation behind what you're doing.
Yeah, totally. And as I said right at the beginning, I grew up in a country that we could swim everywhere, and there's so many rivers that are polluted. Plastic on the beach. I just and I'm a proud New Zealander. I mean, I still believe we are clean and green, but and relative to other countries, but we certainly need to do more. And because I lived in London for 5 years, and I not played off, but I loved the fact that Londoners would always say you've come from a beautiful place and you're so lucky, and we are, but we still need to do a lot to deal with our waste, because there are actually, in fact, some other European countries that are older than us that are actually probably doing a better job. We're just lucky we're young. So the more people we can get involved in this sector, and the people who can actually connect it into a business, the better we will be.
Yes, definitely. And I do think that comparing to a lot of places, New Zealand is really doing really well. But yet, as you say, there's a long way to improve. And I came to New Zealand almost 6 years ago. I haven't seen how a lot of these things deteriorated throughout time. Like every time that I talk to someone that is in their 50s, 60s, 70s, they talk about what it used to be, that they could go everywhere and swim, that some of the landscapes look a little bit different. And I don't have that comparison. Yet I do know, based on what I see, that it is beautiful. Yet there are some places that we could do better. And I hope that, as you say, that with the government declaring the climate emergency, councils starting to get them on top of that, and what will come in the next few years, I am hopeful that we'll be able to do some of these things that are necessary to create the change.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, schools are on board. There's some really good advocates out there that are touring the country, talking about waste. 5-6 years ago, there's hardly anyone doing that sort of work. So, I think it's really, really important in this space to be positive. I'm a total optimist. So I find it really frustrating when I hear all the doom and gloom around it. So, and I don't want my children or the children of New Zealand to feel really down and anxious about it. It's actually messaging in a positive way of enhancement, I think, is really, really important. And actually linking products with not only helping the planet, how is it going to help you? So one of our hero products in our nil range is the New Zealand wool makeup pad removers. Wool is an amazing product that we have here in New Zealand. It's hypoallergenic, it's antibacterial, it's soft, we've got abundance of it, and it's going to waste because no one's using it. But we've made this amazing makeup remover pad that is fabulous, So for me, that's a positive story instead of makeup pads that people just throw out. But actually, that actual product's also really good for you, and actually is helping the industry in New Zealand where you live. So I just kind of, it's not about doom and gloom. It's about the possibilities, and it's about thinking differently on on how we make a product, you know. But there's got to be different ways, and that's creativity, that's freedom, I think.
Yeah, that's so wonderful. And getting to a last few questions, what would be a resource that you would recommend to others to go and check out?
Your mother and your grandmother. I think connecting with your whānau, connecting, talking in the old ways, because actually, to be honest, most of our products are not new. Most of our products, our great grannies and grandfathers used. So, they have lots of knowledge. And also they're in a time, especially in the 40s and 50s, where families would sit down and eat together, they'd connect together. People weren't working ridiculous amounts of hours. They saw the value in being all rounded about different activities. And as I said right at the beginning, driving to the rubbish dump, actually, splitting off your rubbish, where these days people just put it in a bin and someone comes and picks it up for you. So, connecting, and that's really important to share that knowledge. I suppose it's a little bit old-fashioned and tribal-based, but
sometimes that's the solution. Sometimes this is the interesting thing about this. The solutions are simple.
Absolutely.
We overcomplicate it, but the solutions are simple, and the solutions are here. And especially I find it in a country like New Zealand, where we have an Aboriginal culture, that a lot of these topics are within their worldview as well, that it's easier to sometimes connect with that. Yeah. Wonderful. And what is your one go-to tip, if you have just one thing to share with someone?
Everything will always be okay. Makes me sad that there's so much anxiety and depression and mental health in New Zealand. And everything will be okay. Trust yourself, trust the planet, trust the government. Keep doing positive, healthy things to connect.
Wonderful. And on a personal level, what has been your latest small act of kindness?
I'm trying to listen, listen more, and really trying to listen hard on what people are really saying. I think, and my thing too is actually I don't want to email people all the time. I want to talk to them. I want to meet them. I want to really understand them, and that's right down to from a business point of view, key buyers, right down to customers, to really understand what they need and want.
And lastly, and perhaps similar to what you mentioned before, but what is the one thing that you wish everyone in the world knew?
Oh, everyone in the world knew. Life's great. That's probably too simple. I don't know. That's a big question, isn't it? But I just hope everyone has a journey that they feel like they're contributing. I think if you contribute to a greater community, it actually brings a lot of benefits to you as a person as well. Beautiful.
And lastly, how can people find you and your products?
So if you want any Munch cupboard products, it's www.munchcupboard.com. So we're all about kitchen category, so it's all about 100% sustainable kitchens for the world. We sell into foodstuffs and Whare Fresh and more Wilsons. You'll find us at many places. Baby City for the baby lines. Sorry for retailers who I've forgotten, but there are lots and lots of retailers. Or you can go to our other brand, which is www.nilproducts.com. And again, we're in a number of retail stores. We've been developing a lot more of our beauty range in that brand. We did a survey about a year ago asking people, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want in this sector? And they said they want to get plastic out of their bathroom. So we have been developing that in that brand quite a lot.
Beautiful. And
the social handles, isn't it? So the handles are at Munch Covered, and then for Nil Products is at Nil Products.
Awesome. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Anna. And for everyone that is listening to this episode, we're going to put those links in the notes of the episode so you can easily access them. And would love to hear for anyone that actually learned something or something resonated with you, to comment on the episode, to share with us on social. And if you already use some of the products as well, share your experience with them. And once again, Anna, thank you so much for taking the time and for doing what you're doing, and keep on doing that.
Great. Same with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
What did you like the most about this episode? Take a moment to think about what change you can make in your life today.
Share your conscious action on social media using #ConsciousAction and tagging @ConsciousActionNZ so we can celebrate your impact on the world and create a ripple effect.
One easy action we would love for you to take right now is to share, like, and subscribe to this podcast. This will help us get these messages out into the world and inspire more people to take conscious action in their own lives, contributing to the better world we hope for.